I am a genius. I am a genius. I am a genius. Yeah, no, I'm not a genius. These are blue light glasses. But let's think. What if I could be a genius, that is? What if I could manipulate my own brain to believe in its own mastery of a specific task and in doing so, succeed in that task? Better yet, what if anyone could? The 18th century was a time filled with real geniuses and inventors who paved the way for a brighter future. It was a time of a whimsical imagination characterized by its numerous groundbreaking products, such as the hot air balloon, the metric system, and some more debatable ones like sparkling water. So as you can hear now, one of its greatest innovations was in music, with one of the greatest musical composers of all time coming to fruition in this era, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Now, we all know of his role as a breathtakingly skilled songsmith. But if we dig a little bit deeper into his story, something unique becomes uncovered. His mindset at the time, and more specifically, his obsession. Obsession not like serial killers and stalkers, but the obsessions that we all have, focusing our minds on activity, work, and practically anything we put our minds to. There is evidence that Mozart had a particularly obsessive personality, from the things he wrote in letters to the unusual and absurd style of his music. There was something different about him and his relationship with his work. He was obsessed with it, and that was the key ingredient to its uniqueness and thus his fame. Now, Mozart, while he is one of a kind, his obsession is far from it. In fact, every one of you has such obsessions to varying extents, and thus the dormant ability to channel it into anything that you see fit. You see, Mozart nearly achieved the perfect mindset for any sort of creative work, and in doing so, created some of the most groundbreaking pieces of music in history. And in a hypothetical world where we could all use this to our advantage, the possibilities for success and innovation would be endless. However, there has been no formal acknowledgement of such possibilities or even terms to describe such a phenomenon. So I coined some myself. Obsessive equilibrium, the first of such terms, is the mindset that Mozart nearly achieved. A mindset in which one can comfortably obsess over their work without any sort of negative mental drawbacks to their mental health, which I will get into later. This perfect balance, I believe everyone should be striving to achieve. It is likely that many of you, especially my athletes out there, have experienced something similar, such as flow, a momentary burst of absolute focus on a task at hand. However, it's nearly impossible to achieve such a state of mind for a prolonged period of time, especially without falling into darker mental territories. So, in relation to these territories, I've created a range of obsession. It's something that I call the continuum of obsession. Now, in one corner of this continuum would be the people who don't try in their work at all, but subsequently do not have any obsession-related negative drawbacks. In the opposite corner would be the most obsessive, but also the most at risk. Obsessive equilibrium is the sweet spot of this continuum, a place in which you can obsess over your work with zero negatives. And out of the numerous people that I studied, Mozart came the closest. However, Mozart is not alone when it comes to geniuses driven by their obsessions. Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos are two modern examples of inventors who were both driven by obsession and sabotaged by their obsessive habits. They did not come as close as Mozart did to achieving obsessive equilibrium. Steve Jobs became erratic, with his disattached views being fueled by the frequent usage of psychedelics. Jeff Bezos, on the other hand, while not so disillusioned, ruled Amazon like a mad tyrant, with his obsessive policies and choices leading to the unionization of his workers and the eventual dissolution of his marriage. So yes, they did not come as close in achieving obsessive equilibrium, but despite these negatives that earned them each their respective spot on my continuum, Whether it be frequent LSD usage or pure harshness, their experiences with obsession were not complete failures. That's not to say that such a failure has never happened. This is Melville Dewey. Many of you have likely never heard of Melville Dewey, but surprise, he had obsessions. He was obsessed with numbers and organization, and the product of these obsessions was something much more known than himself, the Dewey Decimal System. It's an American Library Association system used across the nation today. Dewey himself was a well-renowned member of the librarian community, and he was a brilliant man. So why is it that many of you don't know him? Well, as you might have expected, his obsessions leaked into his personal life in a very negative way. I'll spare you the details, but Dewey began to obsess over women, with him being kicked out of the American Library Association after 4 separate complaints from women he had harassed. He was eventually stripped of all his honor, with his name being taken off of the top library award in recent years, and with him being understandably forgotten by society. Although his invention helps millions of libraries today, its attachment to such a vile man makes this my clearest example of an obsessive catastrophe. Obsession is a powerful and volatile thing. Throughout my own life, I directed my own tendencies towards several activities, being raised in an environment where success was expected in practically all my ventures. It was math, it was piano, and eventually it was physical fitness. So 3 years ago, I went into the gym with my dad and my cousin, thinking that big muscles was the only way to achieve true masculinity. And I made significant progress over the years, eventually surpassing my dad, who's probably glaring at me right now, and receiving praise from those around me. But that feeling of achievement, that feeling of self-worth, never came. What took its place was much more harmful. You see, entering weightlifting, pursuing a perfect body image, my relationship with the gym and my own body quickly became unhealthy. I would starve myself, stare at my physique for hours in discontent, and work my body well past injury. Now, while I have come a far way from this, there's still damage to the back of my mind, with scars to my self-esteem that will likely never heal. This is the importance of obsessive equilibrium. While I want people to succeed in the most efficient way possible, I don't want them to mentally self-destruct in the process. However, it's undeniable that such a state of mind would be practically perfect for any work out there. So at long last, how could we possibly achieve it? Well, as disappointing or anticlimactic as it may seem, there's no clear answer to that question. Each of us has a different mind, with different approaches to obsession and work. There are countless external and internal factors that make each of our ability to achieve obsessive equilibrium drastically different. Therefore, refined metacognition, a self-awareness that would protect us from any sort of negatives out there, would be the only way to pursue an obsession-oriented future. Not done yet. So, I am not a genius. Not a genius enough to achieve or to compose musical masterpieces. Not a genius enough to put together library organization systems or even to finish my own math homework on time. But I could be. You see, geniuses are not born, they're created. And if there's one thing that you take from my presentation, it must be that with some dedication, we could all be geniuses. Thank you.